So before we go to the bottom level, we stop and look at one more plant that is kind of making the news a lot these days. And it's growing on the arbor right over here. So this very vigorous vine growing on the arbor here is the hops vine. Today, with all the interest in craft brewing, hops is coming up even more and more. A lot of people are wanting to grow different select kinds of hops and use them to make their own craft brews. Hops is a plant that was very commonly grown in the 19th century, and actually many of its non-brewing uses were just as important as any use in beers. In beers, what the hops does is it provides what was the most important in the beginning was it provided a preservative quality, so that back when brewing was done without a whole lot of scientific apparatus and control, hops, and what we use with the hops plant, the part we use is a little cone-like structure called a strobile that is going to follow. We're just starting to get flower buds on this. The flowers won't be very showy, but these little strobiles will come, and that would be the part of the plant on the female vine where seeds would occur. And this is where the hops lupulin, the useful property of the hops vine, is in the strobile. So people would collect those. August and September, there'll be these little golden cone-like structures on the plant. And the lupulin in that creates a chemistry in water that slows down the growth of yeasts. So the brewer is going to be depending on yeasts to create the alcohol to ferment the liquor. And by using hops in that, it slows that down and gives him more control. Hops also has a characteristic bitter flavor. Brewers, going way back in history, brewers actually had a couple of different plants that they used to slow down the yeast, but hops became the plant of choice because people began to associate that bitter flavor. The English were actually slow to adopt it. They didn't want their ales and beers to be hopped. The Germans had used it for a long time, but gradually it came into England and people decided they liked it. So it was used for preserving. These are all female hops vines because only the female vine produces the strobile, and we don't really even need male hop vines to get more hops. And the reason for that is new hops vines are made with divisions of the root of an old plant or cuttings taken from the vine that you can root. And the reason you'd want to do that is that by taking a part of the plant to make the new plant, you would be sure you were going to get a female vine. If you used seeds, you would have the possibility of having male hops, which the risk of offending you, sir, really
That is good.
don't have much use.
No, I understand.
So the other thing about the hops is that the lupulin in the hops creates a soporific beverage. It will induce sleep. So hops was used if you were having trouble sleeping. You could use a beer, but you could also simply make a tea out of the hops and sip that before bedtime to help make you sleepy. And people who didn't like the bitter taste of hops would make pillows out of the hops. So they would take those hops strobiles and stuff a pillow full of them. Mrs. Child recommends that in her book, and she, like many other people, recommended that the hops should be wet first with rum to keep them from rustling. One person on a talk like this, I told that to somebody and they said, yes, and if the hops didn't work, you could suck on your pillow. So hops pillows show up as very common sleep remedies. And hops is also an appetite stimulant. So if someone in your home, maybe an elderly person in your home, was suffering from a weak appetite and you wanted them to eat better, you could have them drink a hops tea or a hopped beer before a meal to stimulate the appetite. So those were some of the medicinal properties of hops. It's also a dye plant, so you can make a yellow dye out of it. So.